Hello and welcome to the Wheel of Crime podcast. This podcast is ran by two ladies who play games, shout profanities, and laugh way too often. Also, this podcast does cover topics of sensitive nature, and as such, listener discretion is advised.
Hello, and welcome back to another summary episode of the Wheel of Crime podcast. My name is Jen, and I can't believe it's July.
Is Emily, and yes, I cannot believe it's July either. Time is just whizzing by, which I am both thankful and not thankful for sometimes, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. This year feels like it's going by so freaking fast, but so flippin' slow at the same time. Like, I'm already seeing, like, fall content again, and I'm like, hello? Yeah. Was I not just here?
I know, my favorites, like, we're halfway to October, and I was like, already? No! I'm not ready.
I'm not ready either. Like, I love the fall, and I'm so hyped for it. But also, it was literally just cold 2 seconds ago, and I needed to be warm for a minute.
Right? Well, let's bask in the summariness for a little bit. What have you been up to that is very, like, summery that you're excited about? Like, have you been planting a garden? Have you been boating? Have you been tanning? What have you been up to?
No, I'm waiting for you to get a boat before I go boating.
Valid. That's fair and valid. And I'm waiting for my husband to get a boat. Because I bought a Switch too, and that's expensive.
I did plant some flowers, and I got a tomato plant and a basil plant.
Oh, love that.
So that's the gardening that I've done. Very minimal because I have no soil, only planter box.
Yes. I have a different situation with my basil. I planted some herbs and plants out around Mother's Day, which everybody told me was too early in the season, and they were probably right because everything's cooked now. But we had a torrential downpour recently, like a huge thunderstorm, which we haven't had yet. And I, like, looked this morning, and, like, my basil, I feel so bad for it. It's, like, in like a bowl-shaped box, like a little bowl planter thing, but it rained so much, and there's no plug in the bottom, or, like, there's no way to, like, get water to come out the bottom. It just sits in there.
So it's soup?
Oh, it's swimming. That basil is about 3 inches higher than it's supposed to be, and I have not even touched it. I literally looked, and I was like, you went from literally getting fried in the hot sun on those 40-degree days that we had, and now I've got basil soup, and I don't even have the heart to do anything about it. I was like, well, the dirt will eat it. In 5 years from now, it's fine. It'll something will happen.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
It'll be fine. And then I do want to go tanning at some point, but for the next month, I'm so crazy busy, so hopefully the sun is still around a month from now.
I know. I feel like the summer just, like, every weekend is so freaking packed, which is both good and bad, but...
I know, I almost feel like I need to, like, book a day off in the middle of the week just so I can tan and find some inner peace with nobody bothering me, but that's neither here nor there. Has there been...
It's true.
Right? Has there been anything else new that you would like to share on the podcast that you've been up to that's fun and exciting?
No, I think that's all. I think we should get right on into our wheel of questions.
Let's do it. So, what's your favorite part of the Pacific Northwest?
The vibes. Speaking of fall, oh my gosh, the rainy, stormy, gloomy vibes are immaculate.
Absolutely. It feels very early fall to me. Like if you go to the Pacific
like late
Northwest,
August, September.
Yeah, because then it's not super, super hot anymore, but it's still warm enough. But then you get the cold ocean air, And you get to go to these places that sell like fresh salmon and like all
The
these
big
things.
trees.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I'm also with you on that one. There's just, it's got a little bit of magic in the air. I don't know what it is. I'd love to go to Alaska at some point, I think. Like Anchorage, Alaska, or one of their national parks that they have up there, because...
Yeah, like I love Vancouver. I'm a Vancouver to Seattle pipeline girly.
I just love it all. I've been to Kitimat, which is one of the... It's not like a huge place, but it's close to the coast, like towards the northern end of BC. And the area is just, like I said, it's so magical. There's just something in the air where you're like, ooh, like I kind of like the vibe here.
I know, and I love the drive between specifically Vancouver to like Seattle.
Oh, it's
just
gorgeous.
so good.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
So good.
Minus like I feel like there's some interesting little small American towns along that way, but I don't include those.
That's fair. Hence why we just mentioned the major cities. So I like that.
Yeah.
Our favorite parts are like pretty much the same then, which is, oh my gosh, the vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's spin for our next question. If you could be a shifter animal, what animal would you pick? Like a werewolf, but you don't have to be a wolf. You could be like a whatever you want.
I would be some kind of bird because
I feel that
being
for
able
you.
to fly in between destinations would be ideal.
Yeah, well, and I feel like there'd be something really magical too about the literal feeling of the wind beneath your wings,
Yeah.
right?
I would fuck with that.
I can see you fucking with that. If I was to be a were animal of some kind, I don't know. See, it is tempting to pick something that's like either a bird or like aquatic of some kind, because it's like, otherwise I would just be on land still, which I do that anyways. But at the same time, I kind of would like the idea of being able to actually ask my cats what the fuck is wrong with them sometimes. So maybe I would be a werecat, just for communication purposes.
That is smart. I would love to ask my dog as well what the fuck is his deal 90% of the time, but I think you should be a were dolphin so that you can go to the bottom of your lake.
My freshwater lake? Yeah. That'd be a very short journey for me because I'd literally drown.
I think it'd be perfect.
Perfect. Well, and the other thing too is I don't think I would mind the agility, because I did have to get onto the roof recently to fix our weather vane. And I'll tell you what, I'm not nearly as agile as I once was as a teenager. I like got up on my little ladder and my knees started shaking and the ladder was shaking. And I no lie, in order for me to even get onto the stupid roof, all I had to do was like somehow climb up like 2 feet, literally 2 feet. I couldn't do it, and then I had to get off the roof and it was the same thing, and I was like like if I fell, nothing would happen. Like, what is wrong with me?
I think it's part of aging, the fear of like breaking your back or something.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't afford to break my back right now. I'm like, I don't have time for that. Right?
Don't even have time for an ankle to be broken, let's be honest.
Oh God, right? Nothing. I got time for nothing. So that's where what I'm feeling right now, but who knows? Maybe that'll change one day.
Who is to say? But let's spin for our next question.
What's an animal you used to love and have since changed your mind?
That one's tough because I pretty much like all animals. Like, there's not many animals that I don't like. I feel like
sometimes it's tricky though. Like, I'm thinking back to some animals that I did really like as a kid, and now that I've grown up and say like either no more or have had some experiences, I'm kind of like, maybe I don't like them as much as I thought.
I feel like that's llamas for me. I feel like there was a point in time where I was like, llamas are the coolest animal ever. And it's not that I dislike llamas. It's just like, they wouldn't be my first choice anymore. They probably wouldn't even be
chickens?
like, wait.
Because before you
I
had
still
llamas,
fuck
you
with
had chickens. Before llamas,
I
you had
love
chickens.
chickens. They're so funny, okay? And I will never get over that.
Honestly, fair. I do love hanging out with a chicken. I don't know if I would hang out with a llama today, honestly. So I kind of feel you there.
No, I don't know. Chickens are hilarious, and I like them just as much as I used to.
That's that's fair and fine and fun. For myself, I kind of feel like so I went through a phase. I can remember I was in grade 4 or 5 because I used to be able to get little books, not from the book fair. It might have just been the library about like different animals where it's like all facts about this kind of animal. And I used to really be into snakes and sharks. And while I still do like snakes, which is a controversial opinion, I guess, I actually don't like sharks nearly as much as I did. I feel like I was more fascinated with them because of all the different types and what they can do, like between tiger sharks and whale sharks and all those other kinds. But now that I'm older, I feel like it was more fanciful for us because we grew up in a place that was literally 1 million miles away from a shark, period.
Yeah, landlocked.
Yeah, and now that I'm older and I've actually been to places where there's sharks, like, I'm like, no, this is kind of a very valid fear of mine. I've gone from being like, wow, they're so cool, to being like, I never want to see one of those fuckers. Ever. Never, ever.
That's fair. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about whales, where, like, I used to love whales, and I still really do like them. Mm-hmm. But I was, like, I remember I went through a phase where I specifically like killer whales, like orcas.
Oh, God.
And now I'm kind of like, ooh, actually, I really would never want to run into one of those guys.
Yeah, or even, like, seals. Like, I was never, like, super into seals, but seals are one of those ones, too, where I used to picture, like, oh, cute ocean puppy. Now I think about them, and I think about those ones, not the elephant seals. I'm trying to think about what they're called. But they're, like, super dangerous. They literally will, like, snipe you out of your boat and drown you to eat you. Like, if you're out on a little fishing boat in the Arctic. And I was like, nah, I'm good. I don't need that.
I know. It's like, you were supposed to be cute. Why are you so vicious?
Yeah, like, why are you so fucking scary all of a sudden? Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. I feel like we could definitely probably find a few more, but those were the ones that stood out to me when I wrote this question.
Yeah, that's fair. Do we have one more question left?
We do. So I'm going to spin for it, and then we'll see if you can guess what my topic is for you today.
Spin away, friend!
Have you ever seen something in the woods that you cannot explain?
I don't know. Nothing comes to mind specifically at this moment. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like I've had a few scary encounters in the woods, but mostly, like, they're just, like, noises or things like that. Like, I feel like there was a tent incident a while ago where, like, I heard something outside of a tent, and that kind of freaked me out, but nothing that I specifically have seen.
Okay.
But maybe I'm just, like, look away!
Yeah, like, blocking it out. I don't know. I feel like for the woods, 9 times out of 10, if you see something scary in the woods, it hardly ever is something like, I don't know, supernatural or having to do with nature. It's usually people doing freaky shit in the woods.
Oh, yeah.
I will say, and I've talked about this on the show before, so I won't get too into it, but I did go on a hike once where I wasn't camping or doing anything, but we got, like, I don't know, 20 minutes into the trail and heard what sounded like a walkie-talkie turning on and off in the middle of the woods when we were the only people in the parking lot at that time. And then like, for any listeners who were like, obviously that could have been somebody who walked or hitchhiked, we know it wasn't a person in this specific instance, not just because of the vehicle thing, but also right before this happened, I was talking to my friend at the time, and I was like, weird, like, it was so noisy before, like you could hear the birds, like you could hear a bunch of, like, little animals, and it went dead silent. And then we heard that, and I was like, I think the fuck not. We are getting the hell out of here. And that's exactly what we did. So, but that wasn't really a seeing. That was more of a hearing and experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard. I feel like I personally don't spend enough time in the woods on purpose.
Yeah.
So I'm usually safe
I know,
from
maybe.
whatever weird shit's happening over there.
Well, I will be in the woods this weekend. Maybe my story will change, but for now,
Oh God, I hope not.
Yeah, right. I was like, I'm really hoping for nothing but a peaceful weekend where I just get to maybe have a couple Caesars, smoke a little joint or whatever, read a book, get some sun. That's it. That's all I want. Nothing else.
That's all I want for you too.
Right? Ugh. But with that, do you have an idea on what my story is for you today?
Some sort of shape-shifting cryptid that lives in the woods.
Actually, pretty close. Specifically the Pacific Northwest. But you pretty much had it. You had like 95% of it.
Hell yeah.
Which is pretty good, considering I never get any of yours.
You have occasionally.
Twice, maybe, in all of the years we've been doing this, but I'll take what I can get.
Yeah.
Alright, so I'll tell you my description. You can tell me if you've heard of it before. I, in this specific instance, really doubt that you have, just because I didn't even hear of this before. This was new for me. But...
So my chances are slim.
But the chance is there. So, the Kóoshdaa Káa, or Kóoshdaa Káa, which is a land otter man, are mythical shape-shifting creatures found in the folklore of the Tlingit peoples of the Pacific Northwest coast of North America.
I can safely say I've never heard of that before.
Right? So, I've always found specifically cryptids that are centered around First Nations folklore to be really interesting because there's so much history there, and there's usually very distinct regional variances of the same cryptid. For this one, most of what I got for information was specifically from the Tlingit people, which I've heard of them before. I have not heard of this specific cryptid, but there's a lot of information, and I guess if you are somebody who lives in the Pacific Northwest, so kind of like where we grew up, and the Windy Boys, most people have kind of heard of those because they're in our area. This is kind of the same for them. So a lot of people who grew up in the Pacific Northwest probably know what I'm talking about because this is one of those things where it's like, oh, like, I saw something weird in the woods. Oh, are you sure it wasn't a Kóoshdaa Káa? Like, stuff like that.
I see. All right, I'm intrigued.
Right?
Take it away, Em.
So, the Kóoshdaa Káa are similar to the Watsa of the Tsimshian people, the Nat'ina of the Dena'ina Native Alaskans of South Central Alaska, and the Urayuli of the Yupik in Western Alaska. So, where most of my stuff was found from the Tlingit peoples, there's literally, like I said, very minimal resources outside of that, like 3 or 4 other groups. Not nearly as widespread as some other folklore stories, which I thought was really interesting, but physically, the Kóoshdaa Káa are shapeshifters capable of assuming human form in the form of an otter and potentially other forms. In some accounts, a Kóoshdaa Káa is able to assume the form of any species of otter, and in others, only one. Accounts of their behavior seem to conflict with one another. In some stories, the Kóoshdaa Káa are cruel creatures who delight in tricking the poor Tlingit sailors to their deaths, and in others they are friendly and helpful, frequently saving the lost from death by freezing. In many stories, the Kóoshdaa Káa save the lost individual by distracting them with curiously otter-like illusions of their family and friends as they transform their subject into a fellow Kóoshdaa Káa, thus allowing them to survive in the cold. Naturally, this is counted as a mixed blessing. However, Kóoshdaa Káa legends are not always pleasant. In some of them, it is said that the Kóoshdaa Káa will imitate the cries of a baby or the screams of a woman to lure victims into the river. Once there, the Kóoshdaa Káa either kills the person and tears them to shreds, or will turn them into another Kóoshdaa Káa. Legends have it that the Kóoshdaa Káa can be warded off through copper, urine, dogs, and in some stories, fire. Since the Kóoshdaa Káa mainly preys on small children, It has been thought by some that it was used by Tlingit mothers to keep their children from wandering close to the ocean by themselves, and it is also said that the Kóoshdaa Káa emit a high-pitched 3-part whistle in a pattern of low, high, low, which I thought was really, really interesting. And what I just gave you for a description is kind of like, I guess you could say, a very general story or perception of who the Kóoshdaa Káa or Kóoshdaa Káa are, between the Tlingit peoples and the other groups that speak on them. But when I was doing my research, I came across a person who had a first account story that they wrote of their own experience with the Kóoshdaa Káa.
That's really cool. So what's their account?
I'll get into it, but I'll just start with, this is a online story published by a man named Bjorn Dill, Dihle, who grew up in Alaska, and this is his account of his own experience with a Kóoshdaa Káa. And when he published this story, it was in March of 2022, which I also thought was interesting. So we've got a recent account of this.
Yeah, that is very recent.
Mm-hmm. So if you'd like to read more on this, you can just search the Tlingit legend of the Kóoshdaa Káa by Bjorn Dill. And you can see, I believe it's his blog that he published it on personally to share this. And bump up his likes and stuff, because I thought this was really interesting, and I'm just going to take and share with you verbatim what he said, because I feel like when people do first-hand accounts...
It's his story.
Well, it's history, of course. But also, I feel like if somebody went through the effort of publishing their own first-hand account of encountering a cryptid, usually they'll want it taken verbatim, rather than a too long didn't read sort of situation. But I thought the whole thing was super interesting, so now that I've told you more about what the Kóoshdaa Káa are, I think it'll add some context to his encounter as well. So,
all right, well, take it away.
There are plenty of mysterious tales about Thomas Bay in southeast Alaska, which prospectors named the Devil's Country. In the early 1900s, and the most...
Of course, there he is.
I know, he shows up, right? He couldn't not stick his nose in this, the devil. And it was named that in the early 1900s. But the most prevalent is the legend of the Kóoshdaa Káa. Tlingit stories say that the Kóoshdaa Káa is a shape-shifting otter-like creature that lures people into the wilderness and sometimes tricking them into their deaths, kind of like what we talked about. Many Tlingit, whose people have lived in southeast Alaska since time immemorial, won't go into Thomas Bay to this day. They believe it's haunted. Growing up in southeast Alaska, I'd heard stories of the Kóoshdaa Káa being a furry monster that could shapeshift into the form of a loved one, or play tricks like mimicking the sound of a crying baby to lure you into the woods or out to sea. Once captured, its victim would turn into a Kóoshdaa Káa as well. The Tlingit used to believe anyone who went missing at sea or in the forest likely became a Kóoshdaa Káa, and there's an unverifiable account of a landslide in Thomas Bay wiping out a Tlingit village and killing hundreds whose bodies were never recovered, and they'd all turned into Kóoshdaa Káa. Then, about 10 years ago, I decided to travel from my home in Juneau down to Thomas Bay to see what all the talk was about. The peaks in the area still bear names like the Devil's Thumb and the Witch's Tit, but I found that the wilderness and the sinister stories that went with it had been largely tamed. The place was crisscrossed with logging roads. Small cruise ships were anchored in the bay, and when I got home, I penned a tongue-in-cheek account of the adventure and sent it to a handful of magazine editors. They all declined it. Eventually, my girlfriend, who was standing in as the editor of our local newspaper, got desperate for a feature story and published my Thomas Bay piece. After it went to print, a Tlingit man called to swap some Kóoshdaa Káa stories, and towards the end of our conversation, he suggested I write a book on the subject. I wasn't a ghost guy, but I was a struggling writer and figured, what the hell. I sent out a proposal for a book on the history of Southeast Alaska as told through unsolved mysteries and supposedly paranormal events. At the project's center would be the Kóoshdaa Káa. By the end of the week, I had 2 offers from publishers. It turned into a strange and interesting project that, in part, consisted of me cold calling strangers and saying, "Hi, I heard you had an experience with the Kóoshdaa Káa?" Some people laughed. A few folks said that they had, but they had no interest in telling me about it. A handful of people I called confided some unsettling stuff, and a couple of people warned that what I was doing could open doors to dark and dangerous places. I was skeptical, of course. I believe that the stories grew from the psychological pressures of living in a place where it's not abnormal for people to die or disappear in the outdoors. Here in southeast Alaska, rugged mountains, usually hidden in the clouds, jut out from the stormy ocean. The forest is thick and dark, and it's easy to get turned around. It rains more than 100 inches each year in most of the region, and sometimes a month or more will pass before you get a glimpse of sunshine. In short, the weather in the country are unforgiving. The conditions can impart a looming sense of dread. That, combined with a lot of people recreating and living in wild country, means that there are going to be accidents and disappearances. Reality television culture came up with a sensationalized idea of an Alaskan triangle like the Bermuda Triangle. I was cynical about it all. The truth was just that there was nothing nefarious or supernatural at work, just overhyped stories. But then weird things started happening to me. I'm far from the first non-native person to write about the Kóoshdaa Káa. In 1950, a prospector and fisherman named Harry D. Kolb died, and his widow found a manuscript entitled The Strangest Story Ever Told. Kolb's daughter promptly published his small book, and the story has become the best-known legend in southeast Alaska. The story begins in 1900 when Kolb, then 19 years old, was living in a shack with 3 other prospectors in the village of Wrangell. All 3 were broke. One prospector, called Charlie in the story, didn't want to be named, was given a tip by an old Tlingit man. There was a motherlode of gold in the Thomas Bay. But the elder warned him not to go looking for it because the country was haunted by evil spirits. Even if he did track down the gold, it wouldn't have done him any good. He'd be haunted too. Charlie ignored the warning and immediately set out in a canoe to find the gold. He paddled along the edge of the Stikine River Delta and beneath the Horn Cliffs before entering the steel-colored waters of the Thomas Bay. Following the old Tlingit man's directions, he hiked up the Patterson River to where the gold deposit supposedly lay. Weeks later, Charlie showed back up in Wrangell with nothing but a big hunk of quartz that was full of gold specks. He looked like hell and wouldn't say a word other than to ask for money to get a ticket on the first steamship to Seattle. Right before Charlie boarded, first vowing to never set foot in Alaska again, he told the other prospectors his story. So this part's the quote. Swarming up the ridge towards me from the lake were the most horrible creatures. I couldn't call them anything but devils, as they were neither men nor monkeys, yet looked like both. They were entirely sexless, their bodies covered with long, coarse hair except where scabs and running sores had replaced it. Each one seemed to be reaching out for me and striving to be the first to get to me. The air was full of their cries, and the stench from their sores and bodies made me faint. I forgot my broken gun and tried to use it on the first ones. And then I threw it at them and turned and ran. God, how I did run. I could feel their hot breath on my back. Their long claw-like fingers scraped my back. The smell from their steaming, stinking bodies made me sick, while the noises they made, the yelling, screaming, and breathing, drove me mad. Reason left me. How I reached the canoe or hung onto that piece of quartz is a mystery to me.
That's crazy and terrifying.
Isn't it? I know that's what caught my eye when I was reading this guy's story, because usually I try to take a few accounts in when I do cryptid notes, but honestly there wasn't too many other than this fellow's, and his is like in depth. He also references the older sightings, which I thought was really interesting too, and like I said, you read through and it's like, oh, okay, so you were looking for gold, a bunch of human monkey-looking hybrids swam out of the water towards you, and the smell of them was so bad it made you lose your sanity and you don't know how you got here. That's nightmare fuel.
It literally is nightmare fuel. Like, I don't even know what I would do in that situation. Cry
and shit my pants, I think. Like, I don't even, like, just die, heart attack on the spot. Like, I don't know.
Oh, that's horrific.
So then Kolb and his partners decided to go to the Thomas Bay to see for themselves, and most lived to regret the decision. Some of the men from the group claimed to have seen the devil creatures, while others went insane, and some simply just disappeared. But I didn't need to search back to the 1900s to find strange stories from the wilderness. Decades ago, my dad, a very experienced outdoorsman, had what locals would had what many locals would say was an encounter. He'd been hunting deer when a strange feeling overwhelmed him, and then he blacked out. I remember seeing a deer walking through the mist, and then for some reason I sat down at the base of a tree, he said. Sometime later, he woke up groggy. He was wandering deeper into the woods, clutching his rifle. His backpack, which contained all his hunting and survival gear, was gone. Other Southeast Alaskan hunters have similar stories. David Katzik, a Tlingit elder, told me the story of shooting a deer and then spotting his dad and brother-in-law at the edge of the woods. They disappeared into the dark maze of the forest. Then Katzik felt compelled to chase after them. He yelled at them to stop as he ran along a well-defined trail, but they wouldn't listen. Katzik suddenly snapped to and realized that he was clawing through a thicket of Devil's Club. The Kóoshdaa Káa, he told me, had tricked him with an illusion of his family.
That's terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Just leading him off the path.
Too. Literally. And it's like, a lot of these stories, too, which I thought was super creepy, is most people don't physically see the Kóoshdaa Káa, but a lot of people think that they see and they hear their family members deep in the woods.
I actually hate that, and that's why I never go in the woods.
Yeah, well, that's my point, is, like, could you imagine, like, hiking, camping, whatever, and, like, you think you see your mom or your dad, and you're like, oh my god, what are you doing here? And then it leads you off a cliff or something? Like, that is so scary.
What a horrible way to die, also.
Oh, absolutely, right?
Your family's probably this idiot just walked off a cliff.
my moron child, yeah, pretty much. In the meantime, they don't know the horrors that they experienced prior to them dying.
Ugh, that's terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. After a few months of working on my book, I found the wreckage of a small plane during a 30-mile hike around Douglas Island. Much of the island is wild, and I regularly hike around it when I need a break from the stresses of ordinary life. When I first spotted the plane, I wondered if it had belonged to my family friends, the Andrewses, who had gone missing in 2008. Pieces of metal lay strewn about, some hanging from tree branches about 15 feet up. A chunk of metal impaled the trunk of a tree. The plane had been on a trajectory that's often taken to get into Juneau when the weather is cruddy to the north. The wreckage looked old, and there were pieces of what appeared to be a broken skiff mixed in with it. After the site was investigated, the only thing officials were willing to tell me was that the wreckage wasn't the Andrews' plane. That winter, I worked nights on a psychiatric ward at the local hospital. I spent most of my 12-hour shifts with a violent patient who had both autism and schizophrenia. Between screaming threats and profanities, right? Between screaming threats and profanities, he would sometimes rant about the Kóoshdaa Káa. Sitting in a dark room, waiting to be attacked and listening to that sort of stuff was trying. I started to wonder about my own sanity. The Kóoshdaa Káa is much more complicated than a take of a furry monster running around in the woods trying to entrap you. For many, it's disturbingly real, and it's even if it's more often in a metaphorical way. But in the spring, I quit the ward and returned to my manuscript. I celebrated by hiking around Douglas Island once again, this time with my girlfriend, MC, and our dog, Fen. When I walked back to our camp after gathering some firewood, MC was acting weird and nervous, while Fen was growling and barking. There's something in the woods, said MC, sitting by the fire holding a can of bear spray with the safety off. After a quick search of the forest around our camp, I joined MC at the fire and told her it had probably been a porcupine or a marmot. We ate dinner, then set up our tent just inside the woods as the sun set. I drifted off to sleep right away, but it wasn't long before MC shook me awake. There's something outside the tent, she said. I hushed our growling dog, listened, and then climbed out into the night. I walked a wide circle around our camp but didn't see anything. But then I heard the distinct noise of tumbling rocks falling. This was odd, since we were camped on a flat. I thought back to the time my little brother and I heard weird voices approaching us in the darkness while we had camped in this very spot a few years earlier during a deer hunt. When I got back into the tent, MC was snoring, which was odd considering how worked up she had been just minutes before. I ignored the strangeness of it all and went back to sleep, but again MC shook me awake, insisting that something was outside the tent. I hate
this.
Literally, the first time I read this, physical goosebumps all over my body. I was
That's how I feel right now.
I could never be a man.
No.
Like, imagine camping with somebody and they're like a smaller woman than you are, and they're like, what am I gonna do? And you're like, bitch, you're right, but I don't want to go.
That is totally a boy's job.
That's a man's job. I went out once more, this time annoyed, and didn't see anything. Even if there is something out there, I told her, don't wake me up unless it's a bear.
I mean...
Which is such a man thing to say.
Yeah.
Literally, fuck off. Wake me up if it's a bear.
What if it's another man? That's even worse than a bear.
Facts. And we won't get into that right now. After some unknowable amount of time, I was startled awake again, but this time it wasn't MC. Something was pushing against my feet. At first I thought it was Fen. I kicked, but she wouldn't budge. Then I felt around our dark tent and found that our dog was sleeping between me and MC. Whatever was on my feet was compressing the tent wall and pushing in from the outside.
Oh,
disgusting. I kicked harder and the thing ran off on what sounded like 2 feet. I woke MC and told her there was indeed something outside the tent. Literally, oh my god. I like I said, I read that the first time and I was like, oh, leave me be. Like, that's almost worse. Having your partner be like, there's nothing out there, wake me if it's a bear, and then they wake you up and they're like, you're right, there's something out there. I'd be like, absolutely not.
I think I would throw up.
Absolutely not.
I actually think I would throw up.
Right?
I'd be like, I'm done. Just kill me.
Yep. Mm-hmm. You were dreaming, she said. I laid there feeling like I had been drugged. It took all the energy and courage that I had to unzip the tent and search the blackness with my headlamp, and I found nothing.
I hate that. I actually really hate that.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
A year later, my 2 brothers, my dad, and I were deer hunting out of a public use cabin when I had another unexplainable encounter. It was the same cabin that the Andrewses had been using before they went missing 9 years earlier. Back then, my older brother Luke's lifelong buddy BJ Andrews and his dad Brian and his younger brother Brandon had all flown into the cabin in their Cessna 182 float plane. The next day, during a break in the weather, they all flew home to Juneau and dropped off BJ and their dogs. Brian and Brandon had to fly back to retrieve the rest of their gear, but they went down somewhere on the flight home. I was on a caribou hunt when it happened. Around the time we made it home, the Coast Guard, after covering 4,800 miles of land, water, and shoreline, called off the search. BJ, other family members, and friends were still poring over maps, chartering small planes and helicopters, and searching on foot. My brother Luke ran miles off coastline in his boat, and I spent a day walking a grid across a mountain. 9 years later, I hiked with Luke and our dad along a valley bottom until they cut up to the mountainside. I went another mile and did the same. I hunted a while without seeing anything before climbing a ridge along the tree line. A black wall of clouds was engulfing the ocean and the mountains. It was a few hours' hike back to the cabin, and dusk wasn't far away, so I headed back. The fog grew thick, limiting visibility to about 40 yards. Sheets of rain mixed with the dumping snow and the gusting wind set the trees swaying and moaning. I zoned out, thinking only about getting back to the cabin. But then movement to my right jolted me to my senses. A small deer appeared for a second and then disappeared into the fog. Hoping it was a young doe that might have a buck trailing her, I crept to the spot where I had last seen the deer. There, 30 yards below in a ravine and barely visible in the fog, was a wrecked plane. One float was propped nearby, nearly vertical, while the rest of the plane lay in a broken heap, and I knew immediately that it was the Andrews' plane. It took a few moments to say a prayer for Brian and Brandon before marking my GPS location. I climbed just a few yards out of the ravine and to my surprise spotted Luke and my dad, who were below, lumbering downhill carrying heavy packs. Luke swung around, thinking I was a bear, as I crashed through the brush towards them. I took them to the plane, and Luke found a bone amongst the wreckage. He knelt and held it for a few moments before returning it to the moss and the ferns. The Kóoshdaa Káa is much more complicated than a tale of a furry monster running around in the woods trying to entrap you. For many Southeast Alaskans, it's disturbingly real, even if it's more often in a metaphorical way. It's a spirit, says Tlingit elder David Katzik, that tries to take you in both a literal and spiritual sense. On one hand, everyone experiences it, Katzik said. It basically tries to steal your mind, tries to steal in a way your self-esteem, It takes away from you. It causes you to become a person you were never intended to be. Like an alcoholic, a drug addict, a child abuser. What is a Kóoshdaa Káa?
Damn.
In a way, it's a spirit that basically... says, only if you're like me, then you're going to be okay.
It's out
So
here
basically,
creating
it's
villains.
Literally, it's like an evil spirit that's like, nope, like...
You are also gonna
Like,
be
it
evil.
Like, Otter Man, in a way, sounds cute, but then it's like, it gets described to you, and you're like, oh no, this is horror. Like, this is not good. This is literally the force of the devil. Like, the real evil devil.
Yes. The devil himself.
Mm-hmm. My string of strange events seems to have ended, but I don't think I'll ever be able to shake the weight of the Kóoshdaa Káa stories. While hunting and exploring Southeast Alaska, I've come to think of the rainforest as a mirror of my own subconscious. There's something nebulous, call it a monster, or maybe, more specifically, a conglomeration of fear, pain, anger, and madness prowling our minds just beyond the safe edge of reason. As with the actual wilderness, you can get lost in it.
Yee. Yee.
And then for a postscript note, it just says Bjorn Dial is a lifelong Southeast Alaskan. His most recent book is A Shape in the Dark, Living and Dying with Brown Bears, and this story originally ran in the Alaskan issue of Outdoor Life. And you can read more of his stories online. When you look up this specific one in his name, it will lead you to his little blog page.
Well, his story definitely terrifies me. I do not like that.
Right? I also find it interesting that it was like, so the first one is obviously horrifying. You're camping with your girlfriend and you think your dog is sitting on your feet just to find your dog curled up beside you. Forget about it. The second one I thought was so interesting because he basically, just to kind of loop back a little bit, because I'm not sure if people caught that, is he basically saw like a hallucination of a deer, like a deer that wasn't actually there, and that deer led him to the plane of his friend that had died, and they couldn't find his body 9 years prior. Like, that's crazy.
That is crazy. It was it was leading him right there.
Right? I thought that was super interesting, especially since they'd been there hunting and everything. If they weren't even really there looking for
their friend,
the plane, but then he found it.
Ugh. Yeah. I don't like it. Nope. I don't like the implications of it. I don't like it one bit.
Right? But what do you think of the Kóoshdaa Káa? Personally, I was like, for how fucking scary this is, I'm shocked that I haven't heard of it before.
Honestly, same. Like, I feel like in terms of like cryptids and folklore, it's like very interesting. It does like kind of like some similarities to skinwalkers, I would say, but like also different in its own way. But yeah, terrifying, and I am surprised I haven't heard of it too.
It's kind of like you're right with the skinwalker comparison. It's very much to me like an oceanic skinwalker, because it converts people into being Kóoshdaa Káa as well. And then I also thought it was interesting because usually with cryptids, they, especially if they're like some sort of human-animal hybrid, there's kind of like a more of like a fantastical element to it, like a little bit of whimsy. With this, it's literally like, no, it's not that it's a otter man, like a half otter, half man. It's something humanoid covered in long hair and sores and lesions that reeks and is evil, that hunts in packs and tries and literally looks for people to convert them.
Terrifying. Like, what a terrifying description.
I know.
I'm like, I never want to run into one of those guys.
No. Like, I'm so good. Like with knowing what I know now, if you and I were traveling in the Pacific Northwest or whatever, and somebody was like, oh, you can't go there, that's where the Kóoshdaa Káa are, I was like, and right you are. I will not be going anywhere near that place.
I'll be turning right around. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. I actually will stay in Canada because fuck all of that.
I'm actually flying home right now. Thanks. Bye.
Actually, screw it. I don't need to take a vehicle because guess what? They have legs. I'm getting a plane.
Goodbye. But I don't know if a plane would save you because it didn't seem to save the friend.
That's the thing. It does seem like outside of what Bjorn had shared with his retellings, I thought it was interesting how often planes going down seems to be like a reoccurring theme in this. I'm like, he like mentions too in the beginning, he's like, oh yeah, mention of like the Alaskan Triangle, like that's a bunch of bullshit or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know, like I get bad weather is certainly a part of this, but I'm like, you get a lot of plane crashes, my friend. And for like that area that you're living in, like that's a lot of plane crashes.
I mean, if they are calling it the Alaskan Triangle, I feel like there's something there.
Oh, for sure. But yeah, I mean, if you like today's story, make sure to leave us a review. All reviews are appreciated, but 5 stars is always extra appreciated. And we also have our website, which is www.wheelofcrime.com if you want to check us out on there. We have our email, which is wheelofcrime@gmail.com if you'd like to write into the show. We have our Patreon, which is Wheel of Crime, a Patreon if you want to donate to the show. We have our social media, which is on Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Wheel of Crime. And we have been asking for the last couple months here, after each one of our episodes, for you guys to plug in a listener story onto our Google form, which is up on our social media. And good news,
it's
our
next week
episode, it's here. Next episode is the listener story episode. So thank you in advance to everybody who wrote in your submissions. Your cooperation is greatly appreciated, as always, and we are looking forward to being able to read your stories, and hopefully we'll have a little spooky stop in our summer here while Jen and I take our much needed break to catch up on life, I think, at this point.
I took a sneak peek at some of the stories that were submitted. Honestly, there's some juicy ones in there. I'm really excited.
Oh, man, and I'm excited too because I know literally nothing, as per usual, with our listener submission stories. But yeah, so tune in next week, guys. It should be a party either way, and we are looking forward to gathering around the campfire, sharing in a little beverage and a little scary story.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll see you next week with another spooky, scary listener story episode. So they're our favorite ones, so be sure to tune in.
All right, guys, see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.